Echoes of Humans, Beliefs and Perspectives. Chapter 4, Ancient Chinese Philosophy. The prehistoric Chinese embraced a worldview with the idea of Shangdi, a supreme being presiding over spirits that existed in a hierarchy. But this folksy belief was never a part of the mainstream Chinese philosophy. This was also unlike other places, where texts lent to the divine validity. From its earliest days, a pragmatic orientation marked the Chinese thought, not the cerebral grasp of some first principle, as elsewhere taught. The Chinese mind buried itself in what constituted life and morality, and whether humans were predisposed towards good, evil, or plain sensuality. In ancient China, there was no interest in the volitional act of creation. The world had always existed and will always exist without cessation. The moot question was not some concealed truth or how to know it, but what was the most salutary way of life to which the humans should submit. The Chinese, like the Tao, believed that across man and nature, there was a recurring echo. Tapping into this can lead one to all that one needed to know. The dead and the living are a part of the same construct. They are coupled like the chime and the bell when it is struck. Early Chinese outlook was rooted in diurnal rhythms and cycles of moon. Unlike some other places where the linear movement was considered more opportune, in the pre-Confucian world, people and spirits existed side by side. Almost entirely, they were preoccupied with elaborate rituals and sacrifice. At that time in China, 5 semi-divine beings were said to rule. Those misty times were followed by rulers like Yao, Shun, and Yu. The great Yu founded the first Chinese dynasty called the Xia. Dikes and waterways to manage the floods was his fabled idea. Xia dynasty lost its credibility with Xia's profligacy. The tyrant even built a lake of wine, breaching kingly responsibility. In sensuous capers, he and his concubine, Mozi, rejoiced, until Tang of Shang dynasty came, and the Xias were destroyed. It is also possible that in the dimly lit past before the Shang, the sage kings were no more than cultural heroes of the land, their actual existence more the stuff of legend and folklore, as was the wont in the prehistoric times of many a shore. The Shang dynasty, too, after half a millennium, perished in sin. Rivaling Xie in iniquity was the last Shang ruler, Di Xin, festive orgies and human torture, the debauch loved to cite, till his defeat in the Battle of Muye made him commit suicide. Chinese philosophy drew upon the deep well of its ancient Book of Qing, which was a blend of Proto-Confucian and Proto-Taoist reflection. Like the Vedas, it was a shared effort of scholars over a period of time, a widening rivulet that amassed the periodic cogitations of the Chinese mind. It was a divination text of hexagrams and what they boded, outlining a list of acts which were either punished or rewarded. I Ching wanted the humans to delight in Tian and understand fate, and emulate the virtuous behavior therein innate. The ancient Chinese believed that the basis of existence was a material energy lying in primary state. This energy was embedded in all objects and lives as they awaited their fate. It was further split into yin and yang existing in codependency. Their individual value varied with each contingency. In the eddying mass of yin and yang, all things were immersed, a dualism of opposite forces in which complementarities lurked. In ancient China, such was the importance of the polarity concept that officials were appointed to harmonize its content. Yin and yang lay at a deeper level than the five elements of nature. They were the ultimate principles that ruled the cosmos in every measure. Yin was the receptive feminine principle, and yang the active one. Through their balanced inequality, the great cosmos was run. Along with yin and yang, Tian was important in the Chinese context. Tian was heaven but was dissimilar to the Judeo-Christian concept. Though potent, it did not exist outside of time and space. Not a creator, it was a kind of formation and a moral force. In this China, kings could be overthrown if they lost the mandate of heaven. Heaven's displeasure was known through the occurrence of flood and famine. This was a signal for rival dynasties to take over to mitigate the popular dissent. It was a democracy made not by people but by Tian's intent. With the spring and autumn period, two rich influences came along, in the form of Confucius and Lao Tze, who to this era belonged. Confucianism and Taoism can be seen as a pair of yin and yang, two systems of contrasting philosophies, but with an equally rich vein. Taoism and Confucianism are the two most compelling philosophies China has given. To Taoists, the all-pervasive naturalness in things is the key condition. To Confucius, tradition and the study of human needs provide the foundation. Taoists reject this idea as it places too much emphasis on conscious cultivation. To Confucius, training, culture, and civilization, countless virtues in Tao. Taoists look upon this kind of knowledge as an impediment to Tao. Taoism advocates going back to the natural world to get the clues, to help man develop his intuitive understanding and views. In terms of their long-term influence, Taoism ranks alongside the Confucian beliefs, even as Taoism thinks that Confucianism is rife with unnatural sensibilities. Scholars regard Taoism as an apt system for those who are not entangled, and Confucianism for those whose ambition in the world is centered. In China, they say, practice Confucianism on the outside and Taoism on the inside. For Taoists, the pursuit of worldly goals did not any joy provide. Human attempts to make the world a better place they decried. In fact, each attempt at interference brought with it a new plight. Confucianism is the philosophy of ideal personhood built around Ren and Li. Subserving righteousness are these principles of benevolence and propriety. Taoism is more a form of individual deliverance from the problems of life. With the help of Tao, it seeks a path beyond human strife. In Confucius, China found one of its greatest minds and inspiration, a quality of thought upon which could rest an entire civilization. From being a part of the Chinese culture, it became its near essence. It may have ebbed and flowed, but never experienced obsolescence. Confucianism is more than just a philosophic school of Chinese provenance. It proposes a universal tradition, a way of life, and even a form of governance. Over a period of time, it emerged as a key influence on the Chinese society. It may even be appropriate to call it a form of secular morality. Confucian humanism believes that the best measure of man is man. Man's instincts should be honed rather than seeking some divine plan. We do not as yet know how to serve humanity, let alone the spirits. That is where society should focus on to get the desired results. The Confucius school taught the 6 traditional Zhou subjects: rituals, music, archery, charioteering, writing, and mathematics. Like the Vedic scholars, Confucius saw rituals as a part of moral tradition, a force for continuity, and a buffer against nonconformist emulation. Chinese philosophies believe that creation in its continuity is best accounted for. It is not a creation ex nihilo, as in the Abrahamic lore. Confucian's Tian is not a transcendental creator nor God its primary concern. It is essentially a form of human morality that Confucius wishes to affirm. Confucianism has no eschatology, no apocalypse in the final hour. It has no resurrection, no tallying of sins in some godly ledger. Confucius considers 5 relationships on which our well-being depends: ruler to the ruled, father to son, man to wife, others and friends. Nor does it hold brief on individual salvation and damnation. Ancestor worship is dear to it as a provider of seamless connection. To regard the dead as living is for Confucius no pantomime. It assists the human spirit to rise above the divide of time. Confucius was not interested in the idea of Athenian democracy. The masses could not be trusted with decisions as they lacked cognitive acuity. The morality of the ruler and that of the people should be like the wind and grass. The grass must yield before the wind without any intent at waywardness. He valued the doctrine of rectification of names as it enforced exactness. Any slackness in this would only cause confusion and even social distress. Emperor to be emperor, noble to be noble, each to his place ought to be directed. In this way, the welfare of the ordinary folks was best protected. Analects of Confucius have for long captured the Chinese imagination. They were considered a must-read for imperial service examination. During the Song dynasty, the Analects were deified above the 5 ancient classics and celebrated alongside the doctrine of the mean and the works of Mencius. Confucianism has been one of the key philosophies in setting norms for Chinese society. It proposed several concepts for family and social harmony. To it, human-heartedness and propriety are a manifestation of the sacred, and their intriguing relationship with righteousness is what it venerated. Human-heartedness, or Ren, is not so much about action as about a state of being. It is a denial of the self to allow for others' well-being. Propriety, or Li, is conceived as an expression of the unobtrusive, making visible the alignment of earthly and heavenly imperative. The relationship of Ren and Li to righteousness is one of subtle balance. No unbending righteousness, but how Ren and Li meet a particular circumstance. No egoism, no obstinacy, and no predetermination, but through an admixture to thread the eye of good fortune. Man's recalcitrance cannot be wished away by an abstract pronouncement. There are many factors to consider while making a moral judgment. When Ren and Li are tossed upon the choppy waters of life, they do allow for a modicum of latitude to prevail in strife. When one obtains something, it is not the only thing that comes our way. When one gets rid of something, it is not the only thing that goes away. Some adjunct always gets added to the results in every endeavor. There is a need to carefully weigh this as we launch into any measure. Mencius and Sunzi followed Confucius and strengthened his bequest. Mencius, the itinerant philosopher, taught 100 years after the master's death. To Mencius, human nature was essentially good and restless to flourish, but because of a lack of tending, it lived in enforced blemish. Mencius emphasized Confucius's virtue. In Han Fei, his learning, Mencius's human nature is good and life-affirming. Han Fei's is a naturalistic one, an unwrought material with no ethical principle. Only when rituals are added, Han Fei's human morality becomes visible. According to Mencius, the human mind is not a moral vacuum in some dire need. The beginning of any goodness exists there already in the form of a seed. Commiseration can grow into human-heartedness and shame to righteous demeanor. Sense of right and wrong can develop and make one a wisdom seeker. Mencius rebuts both Yang Zhu's egoism and Mozi's utilitarianism. Egoism that would not yield an inch even if it helped the system, and utilitarianism that was ready to compromise at every call, obsessed by its universal concern for a happy outcome for all. Xunzi appeared towards the end of the Warring States' upheaval. To Xunzi, human nature was congenitally disposed towards evil. Xunzi extolled intelligence that could redeem the laity and the officials. But alongside this, he felt an obligatory need for elaborate rituals. Morality requires an exertion of will. It is difficult to nurture. Only when tied with self-interest, people seek virtue. Human beings are like warped wood. They need a working on with a chisel. Intelligence and rituals awaken man and make him amenable. To Xunzi, rituals were an elaborate affair with a lively incorporation, rice and millet, fish and meat, shades of human expression, songs and laughter, weeping and lamentation, and mourning clothes, couches and benches, patterned silks, and embroidered caps. With Taoism, a philosophy that contrasted sharply with Confucianism, appeared, it was said of the wise Lao Tze, that he was born with a white beard. He idolized the simplicity of Shang and early Zhou period. There was a learning in the primal forces of nature, he repeatedly underlined. Tao is unseen but not transcendent. Its reach stretches across all distance. There is no primer for Tao. The great Tao stamps all existence. It is everywhere, to the left, to the right, above and below. With no controlling center, its influence has a prescient flow. Taoism draws its sustenance from the deep roots of Chinese culture, in which man is seen as a part of nature, not dominating nature. The doer, by not forcing things, vanishes into the deed. By not interfering, he allows the Tao to proceed. In Taoism, the mystical and spiritual aspects of Chinese philosophy find expression. The Taoist world is cyclical. After each holding back, there is a concession. Taoism is pantheistic. A certain commonness fills each entity. Unlike in Hinduism, it is not a union with some eternal deity. On bamboo tablets were the great tenets of the book, Tao Te Ching. Written, they reveal at length as to why Tao, in essence, is hidden. To try and express Tao cannot be the real aim. The name that can be named cannot be the eternal name. According to Lao Tze, with human knowledge, the message of Tao gets scrambled. Tao is cognitively close to us, as by nature it is assembled. The world as we express it is an amalgam of Tao and language. By its very definition, language is limiting and imposes bondage. Taoists do not think afterlife exists the way some religions decree. They believe, however, that we are eternal as part of an existential reality. Whether we are alive or dead, it is just a matter of form. Afterlife is just another part of life to which we conform. In Taoism, morals, court etiquettes, and institutions are there to be overcome. They are hurdles in our way as they make us succumb. The 5 colors blind the eye, the 5 sounds deafen the ear. By their overwhelming presence, they all impede and interfere. Three key concepts of Taoism are Tao, Wu Wei, and Ziran. Tao pervades the universe and is its cornerstone. It is the first principle which causes all other principles to obey. If gods of other faiths are personifications, Tao is the way. Tao is like the markings in jade or the grains in wood, the luster in metal or the vapors in cloud. It sees no omnipotent being beyond this arrangement, no dragging of the past or resisting the future in any entanglement. A cavernous hall is built with rammed earth, stones, and wood. A clay pot is fired till its final shape is secured. But it is the emptiness inside that defines their real state. Opacity, on the other hand, violates Tao and its mandate. Wu Wei is effortless action, a quiescence hard to follow and wield. Only by gradual subtractions can the exertion of will be peeled. Taoism holds that the universe, in its own way, does its sum. Any other way leads to unintended consequences, not a Taoist outcome. Ziran, or as-it-isness, involves being uncontrived in its own state. Living naturally or with Ziran means not to let spontaneity abate. It is not the active being of Confucius, where training and intent dominate. Ziran, by being without design, helps one to emancipate. Lao Tze's great disciple, Yang Zhu, was truly one of a kind. He was not averse to questioning the traditional views on human mind. In whole of antiquity, among the ranks of great philosophers and thinkers, the uniqueness of his irreverence and quirkiness arrestingly lingers. Yang Zhu admired universe not for what it is or what it holds. The universe is purposeless like hermits wandering in fields. He emphasized spontaneity and showed contempt for deliberate distinction between good and bad, man and nature, life and extinction. Unlike Confucius, who on the issues of moral and personal duties pondered, becoming one with Tao, Yang Zhu favored. When offered a royal post, he declined it without demur. To him, the joys of free will were more important to savor. One of the jewels of world literature is his treatise on naturalism. It inspired Chan Buddhism, a Chinese blend of Taoism and Buddhism. It consists of a multitude of parables, fables, and anecdotes, many of these revealed through startling viewpoints and stinging riposts. There is a well-known story of Yang Zhu which shows his style. One day he wakes up dreaming he is a butterfly. He asks, could it be the butterfly dreaming of being a person? By such riddles, he questioned the basic premises of human reason. Around the middle of the first millennium BCE, emerged the thought of Mohism. It became a part of the quartet that also included Taoism, Confucianism, and legalism. Mozi applied 3 standards to gauge the value of any doctrine: basis, verifiability, and its applicability in a given situation. The Warring States period was one of constant strife and turmoil. Mohists were pacifists who saw in strong defense a necessary foil. They were looked upon as somewhat of enigmatic peacekeepers. In their organization, there were grand masters doubling as military leaders. Like Confucius, Mozi extolled the Shias, particularly the farming culture of Yu, but not the reigns of Yao and Shun, when great refinement was on view. He conceded that ancients may have been moderns in their own age, but in subsequent eras there was no need to follow their ideas or engage. Mohism was opposed to Confucianism as a philosophic system. The latter led to a stratified society that made equal opportunity distant. Mohism strongly disapproved the rules and rituals of the Confucian world. It found everything other than a modest communal life absurd. Mozi reproved Confucian obedience regardless of how its desirability was viewed. Confucianism taught people to echo the ruler's predilection and mood. The people concealed knowledge even when it could be of use, and waited to be questioned before they talked on issues. While Confucianism regarded rulers and parents as fundamental models, Mohists believed in universal love and inclusive care as true morals. Mozi's thought proposed equality, asceticism, and self-restraint, a hierarchical system based on only rank and birth he disdained. Mozi ridiculed putting family and class above the welfare of common people. He called mourning for one's ancestors a disingenuous scruple. He opposed extravagant entertainment and embroidered shrouds. To him, music and rituals were nothing but vanity shows. Mozi felt that the natural grain of human personality was benevolent, like fire turning upwards and water downwards in their movement. Man's mind was like pure silk on which ideograms could be written. Its final form depended on which dye was allowed and which was forbidden. Mozi himself was an artisan without an aristocratic disposition. His followers were of similar ancestry, unfettered by tradition. They rejoiced in innovations of science and pursuit of studies. For good defense, they developed crossbows, trebuchets, and incendiaries. Another key concept of Mohism was that of impartial care. On this, Mohism and Confucianism, a common view, did not share. On one hand was Confucianism, which proposed graded treatment of near ones. On the other was Mohism, which this kind of distinction completely shuns. Consequentialism was another idea of Mohism, which for long has endured. It preoccupied itself with doing good and not with being good. Even altruism has to be weighed in terms of its consequences. Secluded good has no meaning, however, noble its genesis. Mozi saw in nature features that were both benevolent and venomous. On how they would affect man, his Tian'an ghosts kept a judicial watch. Men were punished and rewarded while they were still alive. There was no concept of salvation beyond this life. Mozi advanced the philosophy of reason, defense, and science. His men were looked upon as philosophers and knights-errant of consequence. This rare combination ensured their merit were from the top drawer. Different kingdoms hired his corps during both peace and war. In the Warring States period, 100 schools flourished in Chinese thought, from the Confucianists to Yang Zhu, the quirky Taoist. Mozi and Han Fei, too, lighted up this firmament, and Yang Zhu, who proposed sensuality for human betterment. But as the feudal aristocracy waned and China's imperial reign began, Han Fei's legalists arose, belittling antiquity and its helmsmen. They provided the anchor on which was built the new empire. Their philosophy impacted the Qin dynasty in no small measure. Sima Tan, the historian, famously called Han Fei's philosophy legalism. In this, the ruler was enjoined to govern by the needs of grim realism. This militaristic autarky was to be based on statecraft, law, and legitimacy. In its bleak view of human nature, it outdoes even the Machiavellian legacy. Han Fei's legalism was a philosophy of rules, control, and suspicion, based on no higher discourse than statutes and artful discretion. Han Fei's essays on autocracy so impressed Zheng of Qin that he adopted these principles when he became the king. Legalism eschewed ethics in favor of strategy based on information and distrust. Its aim was to develop defense around the king with codes that were robust. Legalism regarded human beings as intrinsically selfish, particularly the elite, which ritually bowed before the king but was full of deceit. Legalism sought the prevention of evil rather than the promotion of good. According to legalism, only a weak populace made the king assured. The king must always contrive to skew the people's perspective. Only farm tilling should be allowed to prevent people from becoming too perceptive. The state should be like a potter treating clay. Learning was harmful as it could make people, some ideologues, prey. It diminished their submissiveness and caused unruly ideas to rear in their head. A little knowledge could lead to a deeper ignorance, making people vulnerable instead. Han Fei also advised that a ruler should practice a bit of a withdrawal, like a plumb line which does not merge with the hollows in a wall. He should rid himself of great inclinations and great dislikes, void his mind to better deal with men of all stripes. The ministers, by their very position, are filled with urge to betray. The slightest weakness of the king is enough to get treachery underway. Their failure to eliminate the sovereign is only a sign of insufficient preparation. The desire still looms, only there is uncertainty about others' participation. Han Fei also taught that the king should suspect anyone who advised excessively. One such person was Lao Tze, who had to pay for his conduct dearly. Lao Tze held that 100 schools of thought were 99 too many. He was waist-chopped for offering this advice gratuitously. Han Fei advised that people should not be allowed to go beyond their call of duty, as this would open the door to a feeling of false piety. An exaggerated sense of self-worth would make people's behavior reptilian and prepare their minds for what they would construe as righteous rebellion. All non-legalist philosophic thought was by the Qins, harried, the Emperor Shihuang got books burnt, and the scholars buried. Only books related to agriculture, medicine, and divination were spared, to keep popular curiosity at the barest level, lest it ensnared. The Confucianists looked at political philosophy from the point of view of people. The legalists looked at the preservation of rule, even if it was evil. The legalists emphasized the need for order above all other distractions, and believed in molding the people's character to prevent any infractions. In Han Fei's opinion, social conditioning was achieved through canons of laws and rights, unlike the Confucian Shunzi, who thought it was achieved through rituals and rites. Han Fei thought that waiting for a sage king was a dangerous expectation. Exceptional men were few, and their worth dimmed with each generation. Many people considered the Qin dynasty to be uncivilized, which only the diminution of stature of earlier rulers patronized. But in the Han period, new things started happening to the feudal order. The system was turned upside down when a peasant became an emperor. Every once in a while, as if exhausted by the frenzy of speculation, a civilization throws up a philosopher who openly avows pleasure and temptation. Yang Zhu's philosophy was similar to that of Carvacca's content, as well as to Epicurus of Samos and Aristippus of Cyrenaic descent. Among these great hedonists across different lands, it was commonly held that there was nothing just or unjust that, in life, intrinsically dwelt. but was so according to a particular period and its accepted virtues and sins, which in turn owed their existence to the credulous nature of humans. Yang Zhu examined the lives of Shun and Yu, the heroes of Xia dynasty, and compared them with two of the greatest villains of Chinese history, Qie, the last emperor of Xia dynasty, and Chao, that of Shang dynasty. He concluded that good and bad ultimately had little meaning in human destiny. Yang Zhu argued that 100 years was the outside limit of man's life. Out of this, man had only 10 years or so for gratification and delight. The rest of the time was spent on helpless infancy and despair, doddering old age, craven urgings, grief and fear. Myriad creatures differed from one another in life, but were alike in death. But animals were better than men in shielding their defining strength. Mosquitoes and wasps could bite, and the black mambas sting. Lions could hunt down a deer and have a savory fling. Posthumous reward has no purpose. It is just an empty blather. In life, the good are often derided, while the evil with impunity pursue pleasure. How does it matter if the good are venerated after they die, and the evil reviled after living in sin without even a sigh? There is no benevolence in heaven and earth, and there is no God. Men are like tumbleweed being blown about in waste untrod. Yang Zhu rejected Confucian propriety and Mozi's utilitarian mind. The moral norms were only a ruse to manipulate the purblind. The pecking order of philosophies changed as Hans commenced their rule. Confucianism took over the mantle of being the leading school. Legalism became unpopular because of Qin's ruthlessness, and Mohism wilted as the rulers found it a difficult practice. By the mid-Han period, Confucius was held to be a semi-divine being. Also regarded was the apocryphal text of I Ching for its forecasting. But gradually, I Ching too fell into disfavor upon closer examination. Only Confucianism remained to become the premier philosophic denomination. Buddhism made a landfall in Han China during the 1st century. CE, 400 years later, it rose in a manner no one could have foreseen. During the Sui and Tang periods, it enjoyed its greatest acceptance, absorbing the energies of the best Chinese minds to gain ascendance. The introduction of Indian Buddhism into China was something truly special. No other outside philosophy had had such an impact on the Chinese people. The sensibilities and the metaphysical assumptions of Indian culture were so different that it was astonishing to see them prevail for more than a glittering moment. While Buddhism dominated during the Sui dynasty, its greatest patron was a Tang, Empress Wu Zetian, a one-time concubine, used Buddhism to buttress her reign. She became China's only female emperor by challenging the Confucian argument that proclaimed that a woman's place was only of a man's subordinate. Many schools of Buddhism became popular during its heyday in the Middle Kingdom. Fa Xiang school spoke of storehouse consciousness from which could be imbibed wisdom. During the course of one's life, this consciousness got weakened, even defiled. This Yogacara-like school proposed a path through which it could be revived. Another school, the Huayan, believed that all phenomena existed in mutual dependence. At every moment, an infinite number of possibilities were in attendance. This also meant that at any time, an infinite number of Buddhas could surge. Enlightenment did not always have to tread a weary course to emerge. The Tiantai school believed that there was only one all-embracing reality. Zhi said between this and the other world, there was no polarity. He also said that at the time of enlightenment, All doctrines were in Shakyamuni's mind, which unfolded gradually to those who to the canon were inclined. Chan Buddhism perhaps best expressed the local thought and yearning. It sought enlightenment through retrieval of one's original being. It did not believe in self-cultivation spread over several births. It held that it was possible to achieve sudden awakening to spiritual truths. The Chan school described enlightenment as letting go of all attachment, like the bottom of a tub falling out with no other displacement. It did not posit any supreme deity responsible for fate. Of all the Chinese schools to Taoism, it was the most cognate. After centuries of separate pursuits by Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, it seemed likely that a calming influence would emerge in the form of syncretism. This was Neo-Confucianism, which looked at metaphysics as a way of rational enhancement, unlike Taoism and Buddhism, which saw it only as a means of spiritual development. It originated in Tang and reached its zenith in Song with Jushi. It became a bulwark against Buddhism, which had overwhelmed Sui. A well-known Neo-Confucianist motif was the painting of Confucius, Buddha, and Lao Tze, all drinking from the same vinegar jar, suggesting they were above the fray. Jushi was one of the most influential thinkers of his time. He believed that humans were good and had a rational mind. But unlike Confucius, he felt that anyone could become a seer. Rulers, however mighty, enjoyed no special access to this tier.